Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Is there a supplementary agenda this evening?
No, there is not.
I'd like to deal with disclosure of pecuniary interest, direct or indirect, or general nature thereof, the items before council tonight. Councillor Wesley.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a couple. At the May 7th meeting, item 4 in closed session as an employee of Union Gas. I was not present at that meeting, but still wanted to declare it. This evening, item 4 on the closed agenda, as I am also an employee of Union Gas Limited, and item 7 in the closed agenda, as I am the councillor who is ID'd in that report. Thank you.
Councillor Brock McGregor, please.
Today's closed sessions, item 4 and 7, 4, my parents employed at Union Gas, and 7, my family has a contract with Samsung.
Okay. Seeing no further. First part of our agenda deals with the planning portion, administration.
Planning meeting process. The process to be followed for each application.
Volume's not up.
1. The application will be announced by name of applicant.
You want to stop it for a second, Bruce?
3. Individuals or their agent present with an interest in the application other than the applicant will be asked to proceed to the podium, provide their name and address council with their comments, concerns, or questions. 4. Council will be asked if it has any questions of each presenter. 5. The applicant will be asked if he or she has any comments. 6. Council will be asked if it has any questions of the applicant. 7. Administration will be asked if they have any comments based on any discussion that may have occurred. 8. Council will be asked what action it wishes to take with regard to the application. Notice: if any person or public body that files an appeal of a decision of council in respect of the proposed applications does not make oral or written submissions to the municipal clerk of the Corporation of the Municipality of Chatham-Kent before the proposal is approved, they are not entitled to appeal the decision to the local planning appeal tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as a party to the appeal. Notice of passing. Information on council's actions tonight will be posted on the municipal website, www.chatham-kent.ca. All persons receiving notice of this meeting will receive a notice of the passing of a bylaw relating to any of the planning applications presented here tonight, if approved, including appeal procedures. Any other person who wishes to receive a notice of passing or a notice of council's decision must submit a written request to the municipal clerk.
Let's deal with the first item.
Item 8A, applications for draft plan of subdivision amendment and zoning bylaw amendments. 1042653 Ontario Inc., 291 to 311 Davies Street East, Community of Dresden, North Kent.
Is the applicant or his agent present? And if so, please raise their hand. I recognize the applicant. Is anyone present other than the applicant who wishes to speak to this application? Please raise their hand. And seeing none, what shall council's direction be? Councillor Foss, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to move the recommendations.
It's been moved by Councillor Foss and it's been seconded by Councillor Leclerc. Any comments or questions from council? And seeing none, I would ask council now to consider the recommendation now brought before you. I will turn to the clerk.
All votes are in. Motion passes 17-0.
Let's deal with the next item.
8B, applications for consent and zoning bylaw amendment. Bradley A. Gold, 7630 Talbot Trail, Community of Raleigh, South Kent.
Is the applicant, his or agent present? And if so, please raise their hand. I recognize the applicant. Is anyone present other than the applicant who wishes to speak to this application? Please raise their hand. And then seeing none, what shall council's direction be? Councillor Herman?
Mayor Hope, I'll be pleased to move the recommendations.
And it's been seconded by Councillor Thompson. Any comments or questions from council? And seeing none, I would ask council now to consider the recommendations now brought before you. And I'll turn to the clerk.
All votes are in. Motion passes 17-0.
That concludes our portion of the planning. And now we'll move to the regular council meeting. Call the regular portion of council to order, and I'll first of all deal with deputations as of 3 o'clock today.
None were received.
Next item on the agenda deals with the consent agenda, and so moved by Councillor Wesley, seconded by Councillor Van Dam. Any items of interest? Councillor Fluker, please.
Thank you, Worship. 10A2, just very quickly, I have a question.
Okay. Any furthers? And seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, if any, and it's carried. Councillor Fluker, 10A2, please.
Thank you very much. This request came, and I don't see Nancy Havens here, so perhaps Mr. Norton can answer the question. This is the first time Mr. Turcotte has needed approval for his invoices. And the only reason I bring this up, Mr. Norton, is this gentleman has been the canine control officer for decades and decades in our ward, and I have had absolutely not one complaint. And then all of a sudden, this approval has to come from us, and he did question I, saying, why is it that I need approval? Like, he hasn't been paid for about 2 months, and he's getting a little concerned. So I just want to know, why is this on here when he's done the job for 30 years?
Mr. Mayor, he does excellent work, and we're very pleased with his services. Our purchasing policy simply requires that when we award a contract for services to an employee, that we be transparent about it and report it to council. It's simply because he's also a full-time employee of the municipality.
Is this new? Or when has this been introduced? Has this been introduced?
I think it's new, but it's our purchasing bylaw has been in effect now for maybe 2 or 3 years.
Okay, then I can give him a response that in fact it's 2 to 3 years old, and he should expect a check someday soon.
Absolutely, yes.
That's it. Thank you.
No furthers? Motion to receive, Councillor Fluker. So moved, seconded by Councillor Oche. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, and it's carried. Next item on the agenda deals with notice of motions. Notice of motions. Next item on the agenda deals with community and development. Let's deal with the first item.
Item 12A, application for zoning bylaw amendment to remove the H holding symbol at 2136615 Ontario Limited, 12 Dufferin Avenue, Community of Chatham.
Move the recommendation.
It's been moved by Councillor Robertson, seconded by Councillor Brock McGregor. Any comments or questions from council? And seeing none, I would ask council now to consider the recommendation now brought before you. To the clerk.
All votes are in. Motion passes 17-0.
Let's deal with the next item.
Item 12B, application for site plan control, St. Clair Catholic District School Board, 801 McNaughton Avenue West, Chatham.
Councillor Vercouteren. I'll move that, Your Worship. It's been moved by Councillor Vercouteren, seconded. Councillor Bondi. Comments or questions? Councillor Bondi, please.
Thank you, Mayor Hope. Just a quick question. I don't know. Maybe Bruce, you can speak to it. As you know, people have come to several councillors over the last couple of years regarding the traffic at Kyle and McNaughton, and there's been, different ideas floated around. I'm just wondering if there's any solution for that intersection, which seems kind of troubling, and now obviously we're going to build a big school at the other end. I'm just, inquiring if there was any thought put into that intersection? Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship, Councillor Bonnie. So as part of this application, we required a traffic impact study to look at a number of items, traffic counts being one of them at Kyle and McNaughton. So there's several improvements that'll happen next year in terms of a design and RFP contract, which will be to bring McNaughton Ave up to an urban cross-section all the way up to Bear Line, including, there's a trigger now that suggests you have to signalize that intersection at Kyle and McNaughton, so that'll be part of those works. The exact configuration will kind of come out in terms of the design at that time. Okay, there'll be extensions of sidewalks along there as well, all part of the same works.
So Bruce, just so I'm clear?
Yep.
Want to say that again?
Say that again. So as next year, there will be a project to upgrade McNaughton, including the intersection of Kyle and McNaughton to a signalized intersection. McNaughton will be upgraded to an urban cross-section all the way out from Fergie Jenkins Way now to Bear Line Road, complete with sidewalks. And there will also be a pedestrian crossover in front of the school, exact location to be determined. But those things were all driven out as part of the traffic impact study that was submitted to us and reviewed by IES.
Yeah, because I mean, I've already heard from some of the residents in the area. I mean, they've been before this council many a times on that intersection asking for stoplights, roundabouts. You're saying there will be a stoplight erected there. There will also be crosswalks and sidewalks that will also be determined when the location of the school is firmed up. Because I'm taking, you're looking at taking the students that would be on the north side of the street, putting a sidewalk in there, and then allowing a crosswalk for those on the south side of the street to cross to go to school, walk to school.
Your Worship, that's correct, exactly. So there's already a stub of a sidewalk on the north side, which will be extended along the north side. And then that's exactly right. A crosswalk will then allow passage for those coming from the south.
Okay. Councillor Bondi?
Thanks, Mayor Hope. So Bruce, sorry, so it is lights, it's been predetermined that it's going to be? Or when you say signalized, what does that mean?
Yes, I assume that will be lights. Like I said, the final design will be next year when they actually go out to tender and design all the works as one package, but it will be a signalized intersection is what's.
And you talked something about traffic study, like traffic count. So you're not doing that now, or it sounds like you have done that now, but the traffic will obviously increase greatly once the school is open. So do you factor that in somehow? I guess you just take a...
That's exactly it. So the engineers factor in a school use. We also factored in the idea that the Children's Treatment Center is going to happen eventually there as well.
Right,
and other uses that are out there to ultimately, basically, it's a trigger now that based on even today's volumes plus the demand in the future, that's what triggers the need for the intersection. Yeah.
And the east-west flow of traffic will be fine? You're not worried about it backing up too much, Councillor Robertson?
Sorry, east-west flow of traffic in terms of?
On McNaughton, because one of the problems that people said is that if you put lights there, when the light turns red on McNaughton, it's going to back up and create a big problem, like whatever. Like I'm in favor of the lights, so you know, but.
Maybe I'll defer to Chris T-Bear here. He's the engineer in charge, just if he's got any further comments on his review of the TIS on that specific question.
I think maybe part of the important part, and I know there's work still to be done, is that, you know, we've heard for years in front of this council what's gone on around that corner. Just, I think tonight is, I don't think anybody has an objective to the school. They're just looking at managing the traffic flow there. Chris?
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor Hope. So, yes, the TIS ultimately did identify that once the school is completed in 2019, that the traffic counts projected for that school now warrants the need for a signalized intersection. We will be going out to RFP for that later this year. We will consider or look at a roundabout, but the roundabout at that location will require additional property, will require a fair amount of reconstruction in that area. So the lights ultimately provide the enhanced pedestrian control as well at that location. So all those things will get taken into consideration for a proper design.
Well, great. That's very good news for a lot of the residents and the people coming in and out of Ecole Ste. Marie. You know, I've been looking for this for years, so yeah, it's good news. Thank you.
And then, and also to speak to your, to the backups of traffic, the lights will be timed accordingly to accommodate and make sure that that there is no backups as well.
Councillor Robertson, please.
I'll be brief because a lot of my concerns have been answered in terms of the timing of the lights to not mitigate the flow of traffic flowing east-west on McNaughton. That could be a huge problem to remedy the situation that's north-south on Kyle Drive. What sort of studies will be done post installation of light, post installation of implementation of the Children's Treatment Center in its location, post the school being erected? Will there be any subsequent follow-up in terms of traffic studies? Because we could say that 5/10 of the time the light will be green east-west, 1/6 of the 5/10. 5/6 of the time it'll be green east-west, 1/6 of the time it'll be green north-south. But if that doesn't work, well, what sort of studies and adjustments can be made at a time when I won't have any say on this council any longer?
Thank you, Mayor Hope. So there are no further studies that are proposed following the completion of the school.
Well, that's not a great idea, is it?
But we will continue, engineering will continue to monitor this because this will become municipal infrastructure going forward. We will continue to monitor it and make any adjustments as needed.
How do you monitor it without a traffic study?
So going forward, if we do identify that there is backups or just something's not operating properly or working properly out there, we'll go out and we'll do a traffic study, we'll go out and review the intersection to make sure that the timings do work and that it is operating.
Should be measuring the cars that are flowing and,
Correct.
and that
Yep.
there's no, okay, so there'll be a traffic study and that'll make the basis of the monitoring activity.
Monitoring going forward, so something that we will commit to, of course, if it becomes a problem in the future.
Okay, and I'll have your email, so I'll let you know.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councillor Herman, please.
Yes, gentlemen, through you. I just, a couple of times I've asked this question. I guess I just need some reassurance and confirmation as to when. I look at the subdivision, for instance, on the Baldoon, and are they going to be walking down Kyle to go to McNaughton to go to school? And if that's the case, what are we going to do on Kyle Drive between, I guess it would be between Grand Ave and McNaughton for sidewalks? That's going to be a big task, I know, because it's a ditch on both sides. So I'd like to see what we're doing on that, Chris.
Thank you, Mayor Hope. So also proposed with this design project for implementation next year, we are looking at doing a multi-use trail along Kyle between Grand and McNaughton. Funding for that was actually obtained through the Parks and Open Spaces Division because it will be classified as a multi-use trail. Something that we recognize will be a fair amount of design to accommodate the drainage and everything within that cross-section, within that right-of-way, but that is being proposed as part of this project as well.
Very good. And one way or the other, it's going to be up just one side of the road, obviously. So it would have, right now, I think it's just a crosswalk that takes people across that road as well, on Kyle Drive.
That's correct. Yeah, just a crosswalk at the south end, closer to Grand, but no, there's currently no sidewalk
That
present
won't
on
change
Kyle.
at this time?
Not proposing to change that, no.
Okay, thanks for now.
Further comments? Seeing none. Ask council now to consider the recommendation now brought before you.
All votes are in. Motion passes 17-0.
Our next item on the agenda deals with finance, budget, and information technology services. Let's deal with the first item.
Item 13A, tax rates 2018.
Councillor Fluker, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's a pleasure in an election year to move the tax rates.
Seconded by Councillor Van Dam. Comments, questions? And seeing none, I would ask, Councillor Carmen McGregor, please.
I'm just trying to find it here. I think it's in the municipal tax summary for Wallaceburg. Should have got it up here ahead. The question that I can ask, and I can ask the question without finding it here on the sheet, is
Okay, it is Schedule D, actually. It looks like page 20 of 41. And it's the area-rated charges applied to Chatham-Kent communities, which has really no, my question has not really anything to do with what you've presented tonight, but it occurred to me that where the X's are, or where our communities are area rated for different items. I was recently at a BIA meeting that there was a bit of discussion with the fact that there is no horticultural committee in Woolisburg. Is that correct? Because I see that we're being area tax rated for horticultural. Because this group was looking at trying to set up a horticultural group, so unless that money is used for something else, so. Or where is it going if there is no horticultural society? Something you can find me out? I don't need the answer right now.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll get back to you with
Wonderful.
that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Seeing no further comments, I ask council now to consider the recommendation now before you. To the clerk.
Councillor Soon. All votes are in. Motion passes 17-0.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda deals with the Chief Administrative Office. Let's deal with the first item.
Item 14A, motion by Councillor Solomon regarding the impact of the municipality on the legislation of marijuana.
Councillor Solomon, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll read the motion then. I, Councillor Solomon, hereby provide notice of motion that in light of the impending legalization of marijuana, I move that the staff prepare a report on its plan to handle the coming legalization of marijuana on such topics as enforcement, on public consumption and impaired driving, public health and education, business licensing, odor mediation and control between neighbors and in our social housing, land use planning with respect to sales, production and consumption, employee-employee relations, code of conduct, medical use, etc., and recreational areas. And that's, I'll speak to it if I get a seconder.
Need a seconder? Councillor Verkuderen. Councillor Solomon, you have the floor.
Just so we're clear on this, in Canada we have 3 levels of government, and the federal government will be responsible for regulating, licensing the production of marijuana and the rules around possession, trafficking, advertising, tracking of seed sales, those kind of things. The province will be responsible for governing wholesale and retail distribution, and then a lot falls to the municipality. And these are just some of the areas that will fall to the municipality. I've been advised that in York Region and other progressive municipalities in Ontario, they are doing exactly what I'm asking here, and that is the municipality get out, through their administration, get out front of the issue and address the matters that would really affect the municipal level. The calls we'll get, just as one small example, I mean, right now, marijuana is currently still an illegal substance. So public use of marijuana occurs all over the place, but it's somewhat muted. However, once it's legal and permitted for use, for example, in any residential neighborhood, you can imagine that there will be neighboring properties that are side by side where there's going to be issues. We'll get calls on that. Right now, for instance, when we have a public event, we have a beer tent. And we are involved in the approval of those, along with the province, but they ask whether we're going to approve the beer tents. The day will come when you have marijuana tents. I can't imagine all the things that we will have to address, but that's why we have highly skilled, highly paid, highly intelligent administration. And that's why they should be addressing this as are other progressive municipalities. So all I'm asking, I don't know what the solution is. I just want them to put their minds in their various areas to how the legalization is going to affect the municipal level government. I know that probably in health, public health and education, there's obviously some issues. I don't see her here tonight, Ms. Wilkins, but in social housing, you can imagine, we operate social housing, and you can imagine there may be issues as between one neighbor and another. I think we should get out in front of these things before we get the calls later that you, I, and others around the horseshoe will get. Right now, because of the tobacco legislation and our bylaws and the provincial bylaws, you can smoke a cigarette, you cannot smoke a cigarette in our public parks. But that same legislation doesn't apply to marijuana. So when there's two people, if legalization occurs in July, and there's two people in Kingston Park, one of them smoking a Rothmans, they still make Rothmans, I don't know, a Players, whatever they are, and the other person beside them is smoking a joint, the person smoking the Players is going to be the one who is subject to arrest and fine. The one smoking the joint isn't. I mean, I don't know what the answer is, but that's something I think our people should address. You cannot smoke a cigarette within how many meters of the arena entrance? 9? We don't have any legislation that says you can't smoke a joint within 9 meters of an arena entrance. I'm not suggesting what you do, but I think it's important that our administration think about it up front. And I'm sure there's employer issues that with all the heavy equipment that we operate, that we should put our minds to too. And I know that, so if you go out and have a beer at noon with your lunch, I don't know whether that's an issue or it's prohibited, but if it is prohibited, then what do you do about the other? So those are all the kind of things, I'm not prescribing, I'm just saying here's a list of some, but we should get out in front of it, we should be proactive, and that's all the motion's about. It's not about, is it going to cost us more? Can we actually save money? Who knows? That isn't the issue. I just trust our administration that we should get out there ahead of it and figure out what problems there may be. You may come back to say what opportunities there may be, but it's going to be a wholesale change to the way things operate in Canada, and it's, yes, two levels of government are going to do different things, and our level is going to be faced with some others. So, and I don't say senior levels, just two other levels. That's the way our Constitution operates. That's it.
Okay. Before I move on to further discussions, you're right, Councillor Solomon, the orders of governments have different responsibilities. And for a while now, we've been concentrating as a group and as a Communities Leaders Cabinet on a number of the questions. I would ask the CAO to respond, so I want to keep the debate focused because we have been doing a lot of work already, and that information was going to be coming to Council, but I'll turn it over to the CAO to respond to a lot of what you have in here, plus your comments, so I may not... it'll keep the debate very focused as to where we're going here. Done?
Thank you, Worship. We think Councillor Solomon's put his finger on something that's of great public interest, and what staff have talked about over the last week since the notice of motion was originally delivered to Council was to take the opportunity of our next forum with Council in June to address all of the issues so that we could actually have a fulsome discussion. We'd also like to have the opportunity to reach out to the residents. I think the list Councillor Solomon's provided is very comprehensive, but there may be other questions that people have, and we can use the community engagement tools on our website to reach out to our residents and ask them if there's other questions that they might want to have addressed at the same time, so we can provide Council with a fairly comprehensive response and give our residents an opportunity to engage in the process as well. And that would be scheduled for June the 11th if it meets with Council's direction and approval.
And also on the number of items that you also talked about, the enforcement and a few other things in the workplace issues, the Communities Leaders Cabinet has been discussing this quite extensively over the past, Trevor, about 6 to 8 months. We've been having this discussion when we knew legislation was coming. I think, Councillor Solomon, your motion is quite timely, and quite important for a number of us to get a lot of the facts out there. And I know that, you know, we've been designated as a retail site from the first rollout, so it's going to be so important that we have a lot of clarity around what's going on around advertisement. So I thought it was important. There has been a lot of work going on. The back scenes with a lot of these specifics that you raised, and I know that staff have been talking about doing this as a community forum, and that's why I thought it was important that the CAO have the discussion. Councillor Pinsino, you had comments.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm happy to hear we're going to have a forum because that is what we need. I am going to support this. We're definitely heading into uncharted waters here, and the complications are going to be phenomenal. We're still not going to get it all right prior to the July deadline, but I think we can, by getting an early start on it, we can solve a lot of the issues. Preparing for the legalization, I believe we'll be ahead of the curve. As Councillor Solomon said, a lot of municipalities are doing this now because they are predicting this is going to be quite a handful. But anyway, I'm going to support it. I think it's the right direction to go.
Further comments? Councillor Van Dam, please.
Thank you, Mayor Hope. Very pleased to hear the comments made from our CAO. I think a forum is a remarkable idea at this time. What's really needed is community engagement. Just this past weekend, I heard from some of my constituents who indicated quite strongly that you know, there may be some inherent cost savings with this legislation in the sense our policing costs go down because there's no longer any enforcement because it's a legalized product. So we need to look at those kinds of things too. And I'm quite sure it's going to open up a lot of discussion. You know, are we looking at this motion from how administration handles it with our own municipal employees? Because if we do, I'm pretty sure there's some basic core values that we have within a health and safety policy that cover much of this. But yet it can be broadened, and it should be broadened. And like you say, Mayor Hope, it's timely. So thank you for doing this, Councillor Solomon.
Further comments? Councillor Carmen McGregor, please.
Thank you, and through the mayor, I just comment maybe just a bit ahead of time, and I'm sure it will come from the Board of Health when the forum begins, but at the provincial level and the association that represents the public health units, we've been working quite steadily to lobby the province to align the cannabis regulations along with the smoking regulations so that they're the same. So if you're not allowed to smoke a cigarette in one area, then you would also not be allowed, smoking is smoking, you wouldn't be allowed to smoke cannabis in that same area. So I think that would alleviate anything concerning a marijuana tent at any festival because we don't put up smoking tents at this point. So, but that is coming. And if anybody's interested, the Board of Health will see this weekend, we have directives from Alpha that our talking points and our lobbying points that are going to all of the provincial politicians right now will eventually be coming to all the municipal politicians after the provincial election. And one of the items is dealing with cannabis. So, so if you're out there and you're talking to them, if anybody wants to see them, let me know. The Board of Health members will be getting them this week. And but I'd be happy to share them with anybody that is out and wants to go to any of those political debates, because there's some good questions on them, not just on cannabis, but some other areas.
Further comments? Councillor Solomon, closing remarks.
Very short. I wouldn't be so sure that there might not be marijuana tents at, I hear that it can be edible also. So it might well be that there's a brownie bench over there someplace. And in Colorado, that certainly is, they have edible shops that they have all sorts of cookies and brownies and all sorts of other things. So it might even go with the beer tent right beside it, who knows. But those are the kind of things you got to think about. We're entering a brave new world, and we just want to make sure we do everything we can do to get it right. And that's what the motion's about. hear that and read it.
Seeing no further comments, I'm going to ask council to indicate their intention on the notice of motion that is now before you. To the clerk.
All votes are in. Motion passes 17-0.
Our next item on the agenda deals with closed session report. Councillor Carmen McGregor, please.
Thank you, and through the mayor, I would move the closed session report for May 14th. Not present was Councillor Myers. Council directed administration on advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for the purpose with regard to Bloomfield Business Park property property lease, Section 2392F of the Municipal Act. Also, a proposed disposition of property and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose with regard to property in Blenheim Business Park, Section 2392B and F of the Municipal Act. At that discussion, Councillor B. McGregor and Councillor Wesley declared conflicts of interest and left the room. We were also informed on litigation affecting the municipality and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for the purpose with regard to Mr. Kevin Jackiebeck and a member of council, Section 2392E and F of the Municipal Act. And Councillors McGregor and Wesley had declared conflicts there. Council received information on proposed disposition and acquisition of property by the municipality or local board and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose with regard to the new school of the Catholic District School Board, Section 2392C and F of the Municipal Act. The following item was postponed: labor relations or employee negotiations with regard to negotiations update, Section 2392D of the Municipal Act.
It's been moved by Councillor Carmen McGregor, seconded by Councillor Pincinel. Ask council now to consider the motion before you. I'll turn to the clerk.
All votes are in. Motion passes 17-0.
Deal with non-agenda business items. Councillor Solomon, please.
Thank you, Worship. I have two. First one is, I was looking back in my notes, and in August 2012, I asked for a report from Economic Development on the return of investment and or the expansion of present markets. And in November, that from the return on investments from our foreign travels in economic development. And in November that year, November 28th, I received a report from Economic Development Services on that issue, and the department went through various projects and described what travels had gone on and what was related to and what the return on it was, whether something had happened, didn't happen, where it was going. You may be able to tell me through your worship to administration, or maybe your worship. I don't have a note when our last report of that kind came forward. My recollection was that it was going to be done periodically. So I didn't think I needed to bring a notice of motion to ask for something that I asked for in 2012. And don't get me wrong, we got it in 2012 rather promptly. I asked for it in August, we got it in November. But I haven't, unless somebody can correct me, I haven't seen one in a while. And, well, if the last one was 2012, 6 years have passed by, and I'd like to, and I think the public ought to know what our return on investment on our economic development and foreign travels is. And part of the reason is I don't like to answer these things without the facts. I've been getting questions about what we'd heard many times in council about the fertilizer plant project and the railway that was to service it. I can't give those answers. I think those are ones that come better through administration. So I don't know the last time we had one. Maybe somebody can tell me, and if they can, then maybe they can then tell me, all I really want is one from the last report going forward to say, I don't know, April 1st or May 1st or something of this year, including that last issue. So when was the last time we got, like, my recollection is these were to be done periodically, and I don't know when the last time we got one, and so can someone tell me that?
We will follow up and get back to you. unless you've got an answer.
Thank you. I believe that there have been 2 subsequent reports. Michael Burton's delivered to the group, and I think the last one was late fall of last year. But I'd be very happy to bring back to council an update.
Okay.
If that's information that council would be looking to receive over the next several weeks, I could certainly work with Mr. Burton to make sure that's available to council.
By the end of, is it possible through your worship, by the end of June? Because we get into that summer period and, you know, and then you get into an election period, and I'd rather just find out now.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Second one?
That was the first one.
Yeah, second one?
The second one is much simpler. I thought we were going to sing "O Canada" at the start of the meetings.
I've just
Do we have musical accompaniment that we're waiting for? Is that what it is?
Just been notified, no, there was some issues around copyrights and stuff, so I will just turn it over to,
That's interesting.
I will turn it over to the clerk to respond, because she just whispered in my ear and told me when Councillor Solomon was gonna begin singing "O Canada."
Oh, you sound like a frog singing it if I did, and I mean a bullfrog.
To the clerk?
Thank you, Mayor Hope. We have done some searches. We found some different scenarios for the singing of "O Canada" that we can put up. We intend to have it listed on your next agenda for May 28th is the first item, and we will begin next meeting.
Good.
There was some copyright with regards to Cogeco and making sure that we had the rights to play some of those back, so they're working on that for us.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you very much, through your worship, to Ms. Smith. And actually, it's the mayor who's supposed to lead the singing each time. That's what I understand.
That wasn't what I read in the that wasn't what I read in the motion, but Councillor Herman?
Thank you, Mayor Hope. I have a question for Dr. April Reedike. And with regards to, this is a follow-up, Dr. Reedike, maybe I can have this is a bulletin that came from the Ministry of Senior Affairs.
Oh, okay.
And this is with regards to Ontario is investing in an innovative new program that helps seniors stay at home longer and gives them the assistance they need to age comfortably in their chosen community. The investment will expand or improve access to supports that seniors need, such as social and recreational programs, public health services like flu shots, community paramedicine, coordinated transportation, as well as supports for daily living such as meal preparation and other homemaking activities. All I want to do, probably, Dr. Reedike, right now, probably is just provide you with this with a follow-up information that you could provide and how that might impact Chatham-Kent and how, in a good way, because the funding will be provided to more on-site services to meet seniors' needs in minimum of 44 communities. I'm just hoping that it's a possibility that maybe we're one of those 44. So I'll provide this to Dr. Reedike, and we'll have a follow-up with that, if that's okay.
So be it. Further non-agenda business items? And seeing none. Next item on the agenda deals with reading of the bylaws in the first and second reading. So moved by Councillor Verkutteren, seconded by Councillor Solomon. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, and it's carried. Shall council go into committee? Third and final reading, so moved by Councillor Oche, seconded by Councillor Brock McGregor. Any comments or questions? And seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, if any, and it's carried. And our final item is dealing with resolution of council. Councillor Carmen McGregor, please.
Thank you. And through the mayor, I would move that Chatham-Kent Council adjourn to its next meeting to be held on Monday, May 28th, 2018, and that Chatham-Kent Council authorize itself to meet in closed session on that day to discuss any matters permitted by the Municipal Act.
It's been moved by Councillor Carmen McGregor, seconded by Councillor Pincinel. All those in favor? Opposed, if any. It's carried.